I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
If you would like to get your song reviewed, dear listener, there's the filthy capitalist option. As Sori says, $125 gets you straight to the head of the line. You don't have to be a part of the alliance. You don't have to be part of the group.
Wait a minute.
And the biggest thing is you don't have to wait. You hop, skip, and jump right in front of everybody. $125 gets you there. You do that 3 times, and then get mashed down to the $75 rate for perpetuity.
Yes!
Also, there is a band review option. So if you've got a band and you're trying to get your band some exposure, hit me up at vinsori@gmail.com, and I'll show you the details about how to pull that off.
You can also jump on Patreon, and there is a option on the tiers to be able to get your band reviewed. Yep. Obviously, we can't lie to you, so we can't guarantee a positive review. Get what you get.
It's just rubbish.
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 That's British for garbage.
My favorite is the community option. $1 at the gate gets you in at Patreon. You get to join an alliance. The alliance joins their points together, and that helps determine what songs that we do.
The alliances hang out on Discord.
Message me on Patreon to get the link.
And they do all kinds of other cool things. They do Minecraft, Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. It's really a community within the community. Anybody can go on the village, facebook.com/Vin and Sori. There's 160,000+ people on the channel. What's cool about the Discord is that it offers a real opportunity for community connection, friendship, that type of thing.
And it's on Discord, so if you're not a Facebook person, it's for you.
You start off at $1.
Right.
Plus you get exclusives. Sori and I are working on a song. So the first 15 seconds of that was on Patreon. Also, at $15 tier and above, when we actually debut the video, they're going to be there live with us. There you are, dear listener.
Buy merch.
And the child shall lead them.
We are about to do Suicidal Tendencies Institutionalized for the big homie, Revo.
I've currently lost, about $60 investing in Dogecoin. Am I the least bit concerned? No, I'm not. Ether is holding up well, and we've got some in there too. So nobody wanted to know that. Nobody cares. But there you are, dear listener.
You have that information.
This is Suicidal Tendencies.
The video playing over here. We're just not going to play it on the screen because it's probably going to get.
You guys know what happens every time we play the official videos.
We will see the official over here, and we're going to hear the audio on that side.
Correct. Okay, so let's do
We're
this.
going to come together for our viewing pleasure.
Institutionalized, Suicidal Tendencies. This should be an interesting one, ladies and gents. Let's go.
Sometimes I try to do things, and it just doesn't work out the way I want it to. And I get real frustrated. And I try hard to do it, and I take my time, but it just doesn't work out the way I want it to. It's like I concentrate on real hard, but it just doesn't work out. And everything I do and everything I try, it never turns out. It's like I need time to figure these things out. There's always someone there going, hey Mike, we've been noticing you've been having a lot of problems lately, you should maybe get away. And maybe you should talk about it, you'll feel a lot better. And I go, no, it's okay, I'll figure it out. Leave me alone, I'll figure it out, I'm just working on myself. They go, well, if you want to talk about it, I'll be here, and you'll probably feel a lot better if you talk about it. So why don't you talk about it? I go, no, I don't want to, I'm okay. I'll figure it out myself. And they just keep bugging me. They build them inside. It's got me, it's too hard to come. I'm afraid what's one side. You will not have anything, I'm afraid what you can see away. I'm not crazy, institution. You're the one that's crazy, institution. You're trying to be crazy, institution. They stick me in an institution. Said what's the only solution to give me the professor to take me from the enemy myself.
This is actually a pretty smart song.
I was in my room, and I was just staring at the wall, thinking about everything. But then again, I was thinking about nothing. And then my mom came in, and I didn't even know she was there. She called my name, and I didn't hear her. And then she started screaming, Mike! And I go, what? What's the matter? She goes, what's the matter with you? I go, there's nothing wrong, Mom. She goes, don't tell me that. You're on drugs. I go, no, Mom, I'm not on drugs. I'm okay. I'm just thinking, Why don't you give me a Pepsi? She goes, no, you're on drugs. I go, Mom, I'm okay. I'm just thinking. She goes, no, you're not thinking, you're on drugs. Normal people don't act that way. I go, Mom, just give me a Pepsi, please. All I want is a Pepsi. And she wouldn't give it to me. All I wanted was a Pepsi. Just one Pepsi. And she wouldn't give it to me. Just a Pepsi. He went through it with my sleeves. Not really back to see. Just yucky, just lazy. It's the word to help crazy. I'm You're the one that's crazy. You're driving me crazy. They stick me in an institution. Said it was the only solution. Giving in from the love, protecting from the enemy myself. I was sitting in my room. My mom and my dad came in. They pulled up a chair and they sat down. They go, Mike, we need to talk to you. And I go, okay, what's the matter? They go, me and your mom, we've noticed lately you've been having a lot of problems. And you've been going off for no reason. And we're afraid you're gonna hurt somebody. And we're afraid you're gonna hurt yourself. So we decided that it would be in your best interest if we put you somewhere where you can get the help that you need. And I go, wait, what are you talking about? We decided my best interest? How do you know what my best interest is? How can you say what my best interest is? What are you trying to say? I'm crazy? When I went to your school, I went to your churches, I went to your institutional learning facilities. So how can you say I'm crazy? Say to go to big for race, leave me suffering at my face. By the time they think my head, mentally I'll be dead. I'm not crazy. You're the one that's crazy. You got me crazy. They stick me in an institution. Said it was the only solution. Giving in from the love, protecting from the enemy myself. Doesn't matter. I'll probably get hit by a car anyway.
Wow.
I feel okay. So I'll be in a fireside. A fireside is where we just go live and live stream the whole time.
Hang out, rolling.
Last one was about 3.5 hours long. And everybody keeps saying, you know, because sometimes I'll have a Pepsi. And everybody keeps saying, like, all he wanted was a Pepsi. And everybody's like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, well, I don't necessarily want a Pepsi because I already have a Pepsi. What are they talking about? This is what they were referring to. All I wanted was a Pepsi.
And you had no idea. Poor you.
I actually felt the song is kind of funny, but sad / serious at the same time.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt I felt bad for the homie because I remember, you know, those conversations. I remember exactly those conversations with my mom.
Yeah.
I mean, she was 100,000% right. But my mother had a background in, you know, the healthcare system and psychotherapy and things of that nature. So she was able to tell when that, you know, when I was in serious trouble. And she, you know, she knew. So, you know, she was probably the only Homo sapien that I couldn't really, you know, you couldn't really hide from her because she just knew me so well. Mm-hmm. And she always knew, like, what exactly was wrong with me. It's kind of weird. But I guess, I mean, you know, it's still Mother's Day here. So shout out to my mom. But I just remember being this young, angry, what do you know about it? And it's funny. It's like, my mental health or my well-being or whatever, how do you know what my well-being is? And it's that crazy sort of push-pull that happens when a kid hits around 17, 18 years old, where it's like, maybe 16. You know, Dorian hasn't had it yet, but Dorian's mentality is a lot different. I think I'll probably run into it with Zoe. You know, Dorian's trying to be a millionaire by the time he's 20, so he's gonna lock in and listen to everything I say so that he can accomplish that goal.
Yeah.
But Dorian is a strange, he's a weird kid, and most was this the thing?
Mm-hmm. That's the one that said it was coming. It's right here.
By the way, shout out to the homie Joe Biden for the stimulus, my guy. I appreciate you. Did he sign the letter?
I don't know.
Did he sign the letter? Is it Joe Biden? Yeah, they're right there. Joseph R. Biden Jr. Mr. Trump, if you would have sent out one of these extra, you'd be the president right now. But, all right, back to our regularly scheduled program. Yeah, like, it's that thing where you're like just about, you're like, you want your independence because you're not a kid anymore, but you're not an adult. You know, it's the adolescent thing. And you start getting more and more opinionated and all the rest of it, but you're not really self-sustaining yet.
No. you think you know everything.
But you think you know everything. But conversely, there's lots of times when parents think they know what's best for their kid and they don't. And that's one of the reasons why. Now, in my mother's case, she did know, but that's because she had the mental health background. But it's it's one of the things that, unless you've had kids yourself, teenagers will never understand how difficult that period is. I'm not sure that our kids are going to have that because we've always given them I mean, we were talking about it yesterday. You know, Orion is 2, and you could say, "Give me a hug," and he can say no, which he does.
He will too.
He didn't feel very huggy yesterday, so I'm like, "Yo, give me a hug." He'd be like, "No," and he walked away, and that's okay.
Okay, we'll go like this. No.
Well, yeah, he'll just push you. He'll say, "No, you shouldn't even have asked me, dummy." And we celebrate that in this house. Like, we celebrate that. Like, you know, so we give them a certain measure. We give them, I think, as much autonomy as we possibly can without being crazy. So I'm not sure that we're necessarily going to have that much of a problem. That and the fact that we're around them almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I don't think that's going to be much of a problem. But you really can't. And to some degree, I still don't know how difficult that period is because, like I said, none of our kids currently are rebelling or whatever it is. So it's a very, very interesting song. But the way this guy put the song together was so brilliant.
Yeah, there was some of the stuff, like he was talking about his mom was like accusing him of being on drugs, which I don't know if he was or he wasn't.
Right.
But then when they put him in an institution, they drug him up.
Correct.
So it's like, well, wait. And he's like, no, Mom, just thinking.
And we were talking about this, like, you know, we grew up being told that drugs was the unsanctioned
your
drugs.
life is over.
Yeah.
If you take one
hit, it's
puff,
a wrap.
it's over.
Yeah. And it's
like even cigarettes is like, well, you're really toting the line. You're like,
well, cigarettes I can understand because of the carcinogenic.
No, it wasn't about getting
ramifications of
cancer.
it.
It was about you. I mean, obviously that was like one of the things, but it was like, no, if you smoke.
You heard
Biden's
Biden's trying to ban menthol?
Why?
I don't know. I mean, he's the crime bill guy, so he's gotta find some way to give the state more unbridled power to harass people. But yeah, it's a strange world we're in. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's fascinating because I didn't know drugs. When I was when I was institutionalized, but I wasn't institutionalized, but I was in a mental hospital for about 6 months. 2 of those months were my social work, because I got assigned a social worker there. I was having a home issue, so she was working on getting me housing, and so the hospital kept me in for an extra 2 months while I situated the housing situation, because in their mind they were like, if you go back to your previous situation, you're gonna have other episodes. But man, so I had, the only drugs I had done up to that point was alcohol, and I had drank like 140, a 40 ounce. It was a football game and the Giants lost, and I almost got into a real nasty, like, physical altercation with my best friend. So at the time I was like, all right, like, I'm done. I'm never going to drink alcohol again. And I was always the one that had to be sober when everybody was out partying, because it wasn't a designated driver thing. It was, I want us to get home alive. Because it's a lot of clubs we went to was in Harlem and Uptown. I guess I've heard Harlem now is great, but when I was coming up, Harlem was like the centerpiece of the Bloods, and it was Harlem World, we used to call it. So it was one of those situations, man, where it was like, so I had done no drugs. Then I get into this hospital, and I'm just, my body is getting flooded with all these chemicals and drugs, and again, like, I'm not on them at all now, but they served their purpose at the time, and I'm not gonna rag on the pharmaceutical industry as far as this angle of it. I think most of these doctors are really just trying their best to figure out how to help people and all that jazz. But yeah, man, I was on a bevy of these, I was on antipsychotics, heavy anxiety, depression, like whole 9 yards. It's just really powerful stuff where I like forgot my address, forgot my name. And thankfully I had a doctor who had a more, I wouldn't say she was like a holistic healing crystals type of person, but she was more on, her theory was use as little chemicals as possible
to accomplish. Yeah.
So she was always like, she would always bias it to a lower dosage. And she was great at communication. Shout out to Dr. Petzel. She was great at communication. She'd say, look, I'd be like, hey, I'm feeling pretty decent right now. She's like, yep, I'm going to lower your dosage by X milligrams and see if you can, whatever. And I give her, obviously, I had some pretty significant moments with God, but I give her a lot of credit for me being able to, on the physical world side of things, I gave her a lot of credit for really helping me because, I don't know if that theory is accurate and right for everybody, but it was right for me. So there you go. But I just felt bad for this guy. It's really weird. It was like a Holden Caulfield type feeling. Yeah. Catcher in the Rye, which I've always related very deeply to that character, which is why it's such a, it just captures that, almost distinctly male adolescent frustration with just being at that transitioning point in his life. But yeah, the irony of, are you on drugs? And then he gets, sent to an institution, which is, so America is basically like all these natural plants that you can find in the ground that can grow wildly in your backyard in Florida. Those are absolutely horrible. But the chemical compounds that we've created in this lab, those are legal. Like, okay, great. But it really, now I look back at it and I'm like, they had me on Ambien, Trazodone for sleep. These are like powerful. And like Ambien was insane. Like I was like ghost walking, sleepwalking. I didn't know where I was. Like, shout out to Ed, rest in peace to the homie. There's so many times Ed would have to like walk me to my room. I was like, yo, Petzel, this is not working. Oh. And she was like, yeah, we're gonna take you off. But like, if they would have said, here's 2 shots of, GMO, whatever it is, and boom, you're knocked out. Like, you go to sleep. But that's bad. Like, 2 puffs of that is bad, even though it'll put you to sleep and not have these crazy, psychosomatic effects on your, your entire being.
I remember them having conversations about people that were having seizures and saying that weed could help them. And I remember the discussion where they were like, there was adults that they were all talking about it, and they were like, would you put your kid on it, blah blah blah, and like the adults were talking about it, and it was like, to me, there's not even a question. Like, if it's going to help my kid not have a seizure, possibly save their lives,
right?
Yeah, of course, why wouldn't you? But there was so much stigma against it for so long. I think there still is, but it's less than it was. The stigma is just too big.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the dialogue between him and his parents, because it's not as so he says, hey Mike, you know, we've been noticing you've been having a lot of problems lately. You should maybe get away. Now, I'm assuming they're thinking that the institution, like, he's like, yeah, maybe I should get away. And then they would present the institution as, the getaway. And then he responds, and then they say, and like, maybe you should talk about it. You'll feel better. And he says, no, it's okay. I'll figure it out. Just leave me alone. I'll figure it out. I'm just working on myself. Okay. So their initial remedy to his problems was escapism. So you have a problem. Maybe you should get away. And his response is, no, I'm going to work on myself.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting.
Well, he's right. Now, obviously, he does need to talk to somebody, maybe a professional, maybe not. Like, just because people are sad or upset or angry or whatever, even in a season of their life, it doesn't mean that they need to be institution. Like, that's one of the things that's like mind-boggling to me. Like, everybody thinks We're just supposed to go through this world and not feel any pain or whatever. It's like, no, the kid's a teenager. He's looking at... I remember one of the things I used to be anxious about. When I moved up here from New York... In New York, everybody was just... The only thing people would talk about was that day. Because, I mean, we were not in a war zone. It wasn't Chicago. But enough people had died, and we had seen enough violence to where we were just like, look, man, I don't got time on a train on the way to school to think about what I'm going to do in 5 years. I got to be completely vigilant and watch everybody and everything. And walking from, Baychester to my school was also the same thing. And then when you're in class, it's also the same thing. So we never thought... I moved up to Maine, and people, I got put in AP English or whatever. But all the kids, it was just such a different thing culturally. And one of the things that really began to like freak me out, all these kids were talking about where they were going to school next year. I mean, we were seniors, we were in AP English. So these are all very intelligent people. And they're talking about, oh, I'm going to this Ivy League school, that Ivy League school. And they're like, hey, Vin, what are you going to do? Blah, blah, blah. And, at the time I had this shtick. I was like this black kid from New York. And people were like massively impressed with that. And I was purposely elusive and aloof. And so I was kind of like this mystery guy. So I was like, man, I ain't talking to y'all about that. And they're like, oh, that's right, Vin's a mystery guy. And so that's how I was able to, but I remember like being home and being like, shit, man. Like, it's September. I'm going to graduate. What am I going to do? I'm not going to do anything. I have no skills. I've never blah, blah, blah. And that like sent me into a tailspin. Like, I was like, man, like, I'm going to be working at a 7-Eleven my whole life or blah, blah, blah. I was
wondering if that line came into your head.
So, it's a hard time for kids at that age, when we're facing that kind of trajectory. I think, honestly, subliminally, it's one of the reasons I push so hard about, setting the kids up, even like right now, like not, I tell Dorian all the time, like, we're not investing for your future. We're doing it right now. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why, like, I don't want any of my kids to have that kind of anxiety. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I'd much rather them be able to be like, you know what? If I want to do X, I can do that. If I want to do Y, I can do that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was a major, major problem for me. And it's amazing. It never got brought up in the hospital. Like, they would ask you what your 5-year plan is. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't have a 5-year plan in the questionnaire, that was one of the things that was indicative of suicidal ideation for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. But they never talked about, like, okay, what do you want to do? Or, but, everybody's in crisis at the time. So I get it. It's just a very, very good song. Like, it's not a song like you're going to bump when you're like, it's not a party song. It's not a, but I definitely could have used this song when I was 16, 17 for sure. Like that would have been very helpful. And I could see a lot of kids looking at this song and being like, okay, somebody gets it.
Yeah. Almost to kind of keep them out of the situation of feeling that they have to get institutionalized. Like, I was thinking the other day about, people that, other people call them crazy, and the uniqueness of certain personality types. So, in the show that we're watching, there's the one character that calls everybody a bitch. Yeah. And like, you look at him, he keeps having, issues with using drugs, and he parties and he holds a job, but is not really, you know what I'm saying? Like, the type of person that you would not want your kids hanging around with is the type of person that he is. But he's such a unique character and a unique person, and I think that his personality is really shown inside the show. And it just reminded me of the different people that I've met along the way through the channel and the different things that we've done. And I'm like, those people are so much more interesting than the other people that I was meeting within the institution. Because when I say institution, I'm talking about like the church culture that I came up in. Everybody was like the same person. There was like small variations, but it wasn't like a lot of uniqueness with each individual person. It almost seemed like everybody was trying to be the same person instead of, but like God is so unique that even if you're trying to be like God, there's so many facets to who he is that you still shouldn't be like bogged down to one personality type. But anyway, so I was thinking, like, we institutionalize these people, or we lock them up, or we med them up so bad that their personality is gone, and then they're kind of like set off, and then you have like another like interesting group of people that those people are over there, and like, I don't know how the hoity-toities of our society don't want to mingle with them,
the bourgeoisie.
Yeah, they don't want to get their vibes, you know. But I was thinking, if we could, you know, eventually I think this will be the case, but when we can put aside, you know, the different divisions that are among us, we can celebrate the differences, but not let it divide us. And then you intermingle all of the different personality types, the ones that are pushed off to the sides, and you bring them into the middle, and everybody is mixed. And I think it's a very holistic picture of society. And I think that society becomes more interesting that way. A lot more ideas, a lot more stuff floating around. And
yeah, we were talking about this, like, when I was at the hospital, and I you know, it was my last day. And I said, people were like, well, we'll see you in a couple weeks. And I said, you're never going to see me here again unless I'm dead. And I was dead ass serious. Of course, it wasn't like that, because for them, even the doctors and nurses that helped out, like, there was a high recidivism rate where people would just cycle back in. Like, my best friend there, like, that was like his fourth trek, and he purposely he put himself in that situation. He was walking around Main Street with a shotgun in broad daylight.
yeah.
Like, he wanted to be back in the hospital. Some of it was really a healthcare issue. His kidneys are failing him, and he wanted to make sure that he was able to be, you know, watched, and he had no insurance, so he just found a way to get himself committed. And I mean, that's what eventually killed him, but he didn't die in the hospital. But anyway, like, that was his like third trip there, and like, I was staying there for a really long period of time. I mean, 6 months is that's a half a year. And, you know, people would come after me and leave before me. So they thought, okay, this kid, he's a lifer. He's, you know, but I was just like, I'm never going to be back here. And it wasn't because I hated the place. It wasn't because, like, I didn't feel institutionalized at all. But it was crazy because I saw people who were institutionalized. Like, people were genuinely, like, legit scared to leave that place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of it, I mean, some of it is personality driven, because a lot of people, there was a very regimented sort of, you can do this, you can't do that. People were telling you, you know, what to do, and a lot, but see, for me, I was still a kid, so I didn't have a problem because I was just looking at these people like adults. I probably would have had a much harder time with it now, you know what I'm saying? Because now I feel like I'm an adult, but at the time I was like a kid, so I was like, yeah, the adults are telling you what to do. I mean, that's normal shit. But there were people that were there that they needed that, or they had convinced themselves that they needed that, and once that convincing is, I mean, that's it. Nobody can convince you otherwise. And you know, and I you know, it's the same thing with Shawshank Redemption, where there was this character and he's locked up, and you know, the whole point is about Shawshank Redemption is trying to get your freedom. And I'm sorry to spoil the movie, but you know, the guy gets out, and it was crazy because they played that movie in the freaking hospital. The guy gets out of prison and then he kills himself.
Oh my gosh.
Because he
How could they have played that there?
Well, I mean, now as I'm saying it, now that I think about it, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because the parallels are obvious. Like, you're in this place against your will, and then you get out and the guy kills himself. We had a group meeting after that, and obviously that guy became the centerpiece of the conversation. So 20 years later, now I figured it out. You know, like, well, not 20 years later, 15 years.
They were telling him to, like, stay there if they get the help?
It was basically like, what does everybody think of this? And, of course, looking back now, it makes a lot of... Now I'm thinking, well, that was brilliant, because there were people saying, yup, I see why he did what he did. And there were other people saying, what the hell? Like, he just got free, which was, you know, I didn't understand it. And, but now looking back, I'm like, oh, okay, that was to gauge, you know, where people were. But I'm like, man, that's a hell of a
Yeah.
That's a hell of a trick or tactic or whatever you want to call it. But it was, the first, that was the second Navy SEAL I'd ever met. So the first one was literally my next door neighbor when I moved to Maine. And I had no idea what Navy SEAls were. At the time, I was Army Rangers. That was like my thing. This was before 9/11. We had come up in like August, and I had become obsessed with the History Channel. And History Channel was doing all this D-Day stuff. And, obviously they were featuring the Rangers and all that. And I just like, oh my God, the Rangers, like 24/7, Rangers. So we moved, and the guy showed up like immediately as we're moving in. And he's like, okay, he just immediately came in, started helping us, and he was moving shit like crazy. And then he is, all right. And he went to this, and I said, hey man, thanks. And then I'd see him in his backyard, because we were in an apartment complex. I would be because my window was looking out at the backyard, and him and his wife are doing this like martial arts stuff. And he's doing like this weird, like Hollywood stuff. But I just think he was just bored. He got hit and he was out. And so he'd sit me down and explain to me. I'm like, so you're a what? He's like, SEALs. You never heard of Navy SEALs? I was like, what's that, man? I was like, are you being serious?
That must have been such an interesting conversation for you.
Like, is it like, or do the Marines have whales? And he's like, kid, you have no idea what you're talking about.
That's so funny, babe. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I thought the whole thing was a giant joke. And then, he brought me upstairs to his room, and I was like, holy shit, like the stuff that he had and everything. So that was the first one. The second one I actually met in the hospital, and that was the guy that showed us the movie. I forgot the guy. I wish I knew the guy. I think it was Don something. Big dude. And he was Ed was, rest in peace, was my best friend at the hospital. But that was Ed's favorite guy, because he had such an unorthodox style. Ed was like, we're like, why are you trying to kill yourself, Ed? We were in group therapy. And Ed was saying all this other stuff, and then we're just going to call him Don. Don says, because his kidney's going to kill him and he wants to control his death versus, whatever. And Ed goes, bingo. And then somebody goes, well, what are you going to tell him? And Don goes, well, for all intents and purposes, Ed, your kidney's probably going to end up killing you. You're going to die sooner than most of us. You're probably going to die before everybody in this room. Like, I was like, but Ed, like,
the honesty.
He was like, yep, that's pretty much it. And then he basically said, well, okay. So you can live your entire life with the specter of that death, impending death, or you can say, I don't have enough time and live every day to the fullest. Mm-hmm. And I was like, holy shit. Mm-hmm. And honestly, so it was funny. Ed and I both got set up by the same social worker. So we were literally in the same apartment complex. So literally, I got out before Ed. The day that Ed got out, he was at my door, and we were like this.
That's cute.
I'm not sad that he died. Like, I'm very confident that he had a very good relationship with God. Well, not a very good one, but that he did. And it was just something all of us knew was going to happen. And he went around 10 years after that. So that guy was a really unorthodox, I think in this day and age, he'd never get the job, but he he called me out one time in group because everybody's like, Vin is just they used to call him, he's just a stone. He's not emotional at all. And Don goes, bullshit. I hear you in the room playing your guitar, and all the shit in your guitar is very sorrowful and low key, minor key shit. Mm-hmm. He's like, people like that aren't, and like, he brought me aside. He was the one that really got me into the whole like Navy SEAL shit. He goes, look, man, he's like, you got problems, you got issues, you done something. He's like, but there's nothing I've seen in you that like I haven't seen in all my friends when we were coming up in he was in Vietnam and all this shit. And it was really like impactful. It was really, really, really impactful for me. Like, he was awesome. But I think that he's one of those guys where like, if you have a miss, people will probably die. Mm-hmm. You know, or Dr. Petzl was like, if she has a miss, you just adjust the dose next week. Like he took, but I mean, that's what those guys do, right? They're massive risk takers. And he was just so open and honest about killing people, and because there was a guy that, I mean, the guy that he killed deserved it. He wasn't in the institution because he got sent there because, you know, as a punishment. He just couldn't get over what happened. It was a rape situation. And Don just, he's like, yeah, I've killed people. I was like, what? He's like, they had it coming. They had it coming. He told me a story. Actually, this story actually inspired, for better or worse, that's up to God, I guess. But they were in Granada. And this, I guess... And so they had done whatever they were supposed to do. Well, they heard that there was this group of dudes kidnapping girls and trafficking them. So that wasn't in their mission profile at all. It wasn't in the brief. It wasn't in anything. They had already accomplished what they were supposed to do. His commander or whatever asked for a 3-day, you know, extension or whatever. I don't know what happened. And I was too hopped up. But basically what he said, yeah, we hunted those guys down. We killed them all. And I was just like... And we're sitting there in group. I'm looking at Ed. Ed's looking at me, and this other guy sitting there crying. And he said, "Look, man, the guy had it coming." I said, well, he goes, "What do you want? Okay, so you don't defend, you know, this girl or whatever, and she gets raped. Would you be able to live with that?" And I was like, "How is this guy doing this?" Because it was so right. It was so right. Like. Unbelievable. He was amazing. He was amazing. And that guy that he was talking to, like, it looked like it really...
Well, I think that when he's talking like that with people, he's being honest with them. And I think that sort of builds, like, some confidence in people. I think that a lot of times people lose confidence in themselves. Yeah. And when you lose confidence in yourself, you can't accomplish everything that you could have accomplished. So I had a friend that they would breed dogs, and she was like, "Oh, the puppies are gonna be born. If you want, you can come see it." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. This is gonna be an experience." So we go over to her place, and as soon as the puppy is born, they took it and they opened the sack that it was in and took the puppy out and got it breathing. And I thought it was odd because, I mean, from time immemorial, dogs take care of their own babies. It's not like human beings are in there to pop open the sacks and stuff. Right. I said, "What? Why are you guys doing that?" And she said, because they've been breeded, and because they do it that way, there's obviously, if the mother does it, she might not be as quick. And so for them to make the most possible money off the breeding, they have to be in control of it. And she said, because in the
natural, they might lose a puppy or two.
Right. But they don't want to lose any, so they're going to put their hands in it. But she said that because the dog technically knows how to do it, but the dog has forgotten that it knows how to do it. You would think that instinct would kick in, right? But she said it doesn't. That they had a dog that birthed all the puppies and left all of them in the sacks. Every single one of them died because the dog didn't know what to do because they'd been doing it for the dog. Now, if that dog was on its own and wasn't breeded, like if it was taken away right away from the first litter, it would have known what to do. But I think, you know, it just...
Well, it's just like dog training. It's not natural for a dog to say, "Hey, I need to go to the bathroom," but they train the dog to do that, to override its instinct.
Yep. The same thing, I think, with even women. Like, forever and for all time, we were birthing our babies with other women in the room. Now we've got it in our heads that the safest place is at a hospital. And we actually, America has, the infant mortality rate is very high.
In the developed world,
In the developed world,
I think we're like third.
I don't know. It was whatever it was ridiculous. It was like, why is
black women have the highest infant mortality rate in the developed world. I think.
It's ridiculous. But it's just the idea that when you lose confidence about something or you don't believe that you can do something, it hamstrings you to make you think you can't. And so I think that when people are institutionalized for too long, there's this need to be cared for. And I think that, you know, sad as it is, parents fail in that. Some parents fail drastically in taking care of their children. And then there are other people that fail, you know, bad enough where it really messes up the kids.
This is where it's going to go extremely left. Like, it's like you said about the dogs, right? Like where they have that instinct to care for their kids, but then an intruder comes in and now the dog is content with outsourcing its primary duty to...
Yep.
So if you think about, like, how parents in America are socialized. Nope, you cannot educate your children.
This is exactly where I was going to go.
Right?
I was going to go to homeschooling.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, you can't educate your children.
Literally, people think that they can't do it. They think, no, I mean, that has to be the school.
Yeah.
Like, the majority of human history, parents school their own children.
Correct.
Like, that's a very
Facts.
new thing, to
Facts.
send your kid away to have some other people school them.
Yeah.
But because we've been socialized that way, people literally feel like it's the only way. Although, I think that COVID is kind of opening up people to the idea that, you know, maybe I can do this.
Yeah,
I think some people are like, holy shit,
it-
I don't want to be muted.
Did you just mute it?
I don't know.
Don't worry. Well, no, I was checking the levels before. It's
So
been
was
on.
I.
It's been on for the majority of the time. Don't worry about it. Yeah, the homeschool one is so very interesting, because if you look at what he says there, he says, "You'll come out brainwashed with bloodshot eyes. You won't have any say. They'll brainwash you until you see it their way." So what's really fascinating to me is that prior to COVID, when we would say, "Oh yeah, we're a homeschool family," people were like, "You're out to brainwash your kids." Mm-hmm. If that is your response, that means that you're conceding that the public schools are brainwashing facilities.
Right.
Because the only variable in that equation is I'm the one teaching my son instead of some other teacher teaching my son.
Facts.
So whenever people use the brainwashing argument about the kids, like, first of all, yeah, I want my kids to have my worldview, and so do you. You don't want your kid to come up with his own opinion when he's 5 about whether or not he can take that G.I. Joe from the store without paying for it. Mm-hmm. You're going to impose your worldview on him to that degree, right? So it's just fascinating to me. Like, and again, there are practical, pragmatic life situations that make homeschooling damn near impossible. And I also know that, I don't know, last 5 years I've been working from home. That's a blessing that, people are getting into now, but it wasn't like that, before. Yep. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm trying to be very circumspect in the way that I'm communicating this, but everything gets outsourced now. Mm-hmm. And so to the professionals.
Yep.
And so the professionals know what's best for your child. New York City was crazy. It's one of the reasons my brother moved.
Yeah.
They try to put his kid on Ritalin without him knowing.
Be so mad.
It's like, boom,
how
boom.
dare they?
Yeah.
How dare they try to medicate your child?
Well, it's that whole thing where the lady says, we have this idea that our kids are ours, but in reality they belong to the community. You know what I'm saying? Like, that just absolutely naked statism. That's a person that's like completely like brainwashed by the system, and now believes that your children are. So yeah, like it's really true. It really, really is true. Like, you're gonna be brainwashed, or you won't have any say until you see it their way. Yikes. Brilliant song. This has got to be some sort of classic song, right? Like, this has got to be. Yeah. And I respect the hell out of it. You know what? This kind of, I want to see your reaction. It kind of reminds me of Peace Sells a little bit. Peace Sells, where you have the talking and then it goes into the music and then it goes back to talking. That's basically the format of Peace Sells. So I'm going to give this song a straight 10 because I think it's an important song. He did a good job of communicating, good job with the lyrics or the words. It was just a massively unique song, and it's got to be a big one. So I'm going to give it a 10. What do you give it?
I liked the erratic nature of the song because I felt like it communicated the message well.
Yep.
I would go with a 9.6.
Okay, 9.6. There you are, dear listener. Moral of the story is, when you see me, give Vin a Pepsi.
And shout out to Revo.
And shout out to Ed. Ed, man, rest in peace to the big homie.
And Dr. Petzel, where would you be without her?
Shout out to Dr. Petzel. Shout out to Don. And shout out to my mom. There you are, dear listener. Vin out.
Sorry out.
Gone.